Dr. Hak Jahan Moon is leading this effort worldwide, and her late husband went to heaven in 2012, and we miss him, but he was a great visionary, and she's made the vision real. So imagine now, we're looking there at a world map, and that little dotted line represents an international peace highway to every continent, to every nation. And it also represents the idea of a railway connecting everything together. So there can be not only exchange in commerce and goods, but also people can travel around the world. There's a vision that one day we will not be enemies with our neighbors. There's a vision of peace. And that's why if we look closely at this Bering Strait, the Bering Strait Tunnel, that area there between Alaska and Russia is only 53 miles. Isn't that amazing? And it's been scientifically proven that it was a land bridge at one time, or an ice bridge, but it's understood that many of the humanity came across that to the United States. Also, we have here the Korea-Japan Tunnel. Those two we're focused on, and we're focused on it substantially. So here's the gap between the USA and how do you say that, Scott? That Uellen, the city? Uellen. That's a 53-mile gap, and there's a very big island there. Big Diomede is in Russian territory, and Little Diomede is in the USA territory. But that also helps the process of building a tunnel across there for various technical reasons. Also, here is the tunnel project between Japan, which is in Kyushu, one of the main islands of Japan, and it's there in Karatsu. Karatsu is a city, and the tunnel's already been started, and it will come across one island there and go to the Busan area of South Korea. That's an amazing project. Dr. Moon wrote her own memoir. It's called Mother of Peace, and I would like to recommend everybody get that. It's really tells the story of their life efforts to bring peace with all respect for all faiths, for all peoples, all races, all nations. So what she wrote in this is the process of constructing the International Peace Highway itself provides the world's peoples and governments a common purpose toward peace. Regarding construction, the biggest challenges are those of crossing the span of ocean that separates Alaska from Russia and Korea from Japan. The divides between those territories are both physical and spiritual, and the joint commitment to building a road uniting them will represent an important steps toward peace for the human race. Of course, it's not an easy task. Korea and Japan have been enemies for centuries, and they're getting along very well right now, but it's really been a very long history of conflict, and therefore it's not a simple thing. Then when we come to Russia, it's another level of conflict. Crossing the Bering Strait between Russia and the United States will prove to be even more challenging than the Korean Strait. The Bering Strait once represented the ideological divide between the democratic and communist camps as the United States and Russia grappled with each other. Connecting these two nations is a vital step for global peace. So that's how we're envisioning this project, not only for commerce, not only for the transportation and travel and the tourism that will explode, but also for the practicality of working together. So we saw that, Europe has been in conflict with the UK for centuries and centuries, but the channel helped to bring that cooperation. So think about this, US and Russia. Think about this. We're talking about the title for today is driving from New York to London. That will be possible. That will be possible. But you better have a newer car. But and a lot of vacation time. But it's going to be something, and it's very fascinating. And then envision this, Peace Road. Peace Road is a project that Dr. Moon started to promote this to governments, to people, to media, every segment of society. Peace Road. But that peace road goes from Santiago, Chile, all the way to the Cape Hope in South Africa. That's an international highway envisioned to really have a very strong commitment to peace. It will not be used for military transport or those kinds of things. It's really to build a connection between all the peoples of the world. So when we look at the Bering Strait crossing, this is not something new. This has been proposed for a long time. The governor of the Colorado Territory first brought it up in 1849 that we ought to build a bridge between Alaska and Russia. And a plan was made in 1906 by a consortium of Americans, Russians, and French. So this has been going on. President Roosevelt supported this idea with Stalin. Very interesting. You'll hear more about that in Dr. Young's address too. But this proposal, it has high symbolic value for peace, in particular by linking the former enemy nations of the US and Russia and bridging two continents. It has immense practical value by greatly facilitating the global transport and exchange of goods, increased interaction and engagement of the world's peoples. It's a wonderful vision. So imagine this now, going across Alaska and also all the way across the Bering Strait through Russia and through China and through other areas of the world. It's quite astonishing when you think about it. And it's a really huge endeavor, but not impossible. Technically, it's not impossible. When Mother Moon said it was some spiritual issues divide us, that means also political and different principles guide different nations. So we have to solve those things for this to be achieved. So the technology is there, and we're going to see high-speed trains going so that you can really travel more quickly. Now we have no idea, but we're on the edge of the greatest breakthrough in history. Speaker Gingrich is a friend of ours, and he just wrote to me yesterday that AI and this more advanced AGI, kind of general intelligence, artificial general intelligence, which goes into every area. He's a friend of Elon Musk, and they're both believing this is going to be the biggest revolution since the invention of the automobile. This is a game changer. We have no idea. We have no idea what's coming. It's exciting. So that's why we are doing academic seminars to understand the challenges. We're going to hear from Lieutenant Governor Meade shortly. And he's also very supportive. Governor Hickel from Alaska was a big support, and he came to Korea, met Reverend Moon on a couple occasions in South America and another place Eugene was telling me. And Alaska's been in support, but again, there's very significant problems that have to be solved. So we'd like to bring in more scholars to do that. That's why there's going to be a discussion about a think tank to help the scholars of the world come together. So we had a peace road. Every year we have peace road. And this just happens to be the one we did with, also we had Scott there and also Lou Cerny and Joe, and we had Russians there with us. And that's the unique thing. We will have a Russian participant today, and we have to cooperate together. Long-term, we're going to have to relate together. So that's also Congressman Ed Young, who was on our program that time by video, and it was great. He was a great support. He's passed away now, but the two senators from Alaska, Senator Murkowski and Senator Dan Sullivan, and also our congressman woman there, they're in support. But again, we have to solve problems. That's why we'd like to continue these academic seminars. These were online, but this has gone on in every continent. In fact, last week I was with Dr. Young in Seoul, Korea, and we were there in Seoul at a Japan-Korea tunnel project. And it was 2 weeks ago today, and it was wonderful. And major scholars, major people who are elected officials, they see the value. Now Korea is getting excited about it, and so is Japan. So the idea of the cost of these things, the cost is more than just some NGOs or people can just support. It has to be governmental support too. We have to win the government's support and cooperation. So And then also that's why we are looking at the Bering Strait think tank today. We're going to talk about that today. And I'm the president of the Washington Times Foundation. Dr. Young's our chairman. We see the Washington Times, which runs the Washington Brief every month and has got accolades from high-level people in the media and experts in intelligence. Every month we have the Washington Brief, and that usually generates news all over Korea and the whole Western world. So we'd like to bring the Bering Strait issue to that discussion with top leaders. And to support, again, Dr. Moon founded this effort called Peace Road. Peace Road is done in every continent. It's been done in 130 countries at least. Peace Road. Peace Road is where young people get together, and we meet also with people who are really peace-oriented people. And then we go meet the governors, the mayors. We've met many presidents of countries, current and former. And in 2020, when COVID was at its worst, in July of 2020, we did the Peace Road with that van of young people right here. And my wife and I went with them, and everybody affiliated with us supported. But we went from Plymouth all the way to the Bering Sea. That was a great experience. We drove. We didn't drive all the way to the Bering Sea, I have to tell the truth, but we drove very well. So that van went from Plymouth all the way to Seattle. And then we had to fly to Alaska, and then we flew to the Bering Strait. So it started there at Plymouth Rock. And then we also, 1620, were our nation's first, landing of the Mayflower. And then we also went out with Eugene Harnett here. He arranged this private plane for us. And we flew over the glaciers. We flew over the mountains of Alaska. And that's when I realized not a simple thing to build a road from Anchorage out, or a railway out to the Bering Sea. It's not simple. And when you see the Straight Guys movie, which is coming up in Maryland in June at a major theater, it's really powerful to understand how much has already been done on this, and it can be done, it will be done. But our pilot was great. He took us for a great tour. There's Reiko, my wife, and Eugene and I, and Reverend Holmes, and we did make it to the Bering Sea. We wanted to touch the waters of the Bering Sea. We actually took Mother Moon's memoir that talked about that, wrapped in plastic, and we dipped it in the Bering Sea. It was a great experience. So this is going on in every country of the world. Here's the rally in Berlin every year. Here's what happened in Korea last time. 500,000 participated with Dr. Young, led over 500,000 people in Korea, participated in a number of Peace Road efforts. Usually we have bicycles. And that started because our UPF people in Japan got excited, and they rode bikes all the way from Hokkaido down to Kuratsu, and then they took a ferry across to Busan and rode their bikes up to the DMZ, and then prayed for peace between North and South Korea. Here's Mongolia. They don't have bikes there, they have horses. All right. Here's the Philippines. And it's just a wonderful thing. We're so happy you're here. You're going to learn a lot today. I also want to make a special invitation. This is on June 21st. I'll be there with Scott. We want you all to attend. We would like you to put the word out. Those of you who live in Maryland, Virginia, DMV, please come with us. It's going to be their Nepal American International Film Festival. They're featuring the Straight Guys, a film that Scott Spencer and Rick Minnick put together. It's a fascinating film, very detailed. You even go see the native people of Alaska dealing with having the railroad come through there too. It's so wonderful. That'll be June 21st. And I'm just so happy to be with you all today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. That was quite an overview of a humongous project, and you brought forward both the practical and the symbolic options that bring about with this kind of project. Before we move on to our next speaker, we're actually going to show you a video that is a joint production between the Russia Academy of Sciences and the Ministry of Economic Development that covers this topic of the Bering Strait Tunnel. So if you can turn your attention to the screen and enjoy this video. Fascinating video, yes? Yes. I think the point of it is that, real efforts and progress has been made. This is not just a project of theory and hope, but it is also practical, and we do hope to see it come to reality. So we are going to invite our next speaker, which is a pre-recorded video. This is Honorable Meade Treadwell. He was the Lieutenant Governor of Alaska from 2010 to 2014. After he left office, he remained very active in all areas of the public sphere, especially in the energy business. He chairs his own successful consultancy, Treadwell Development, and he's attending energy meetings in Anchorage today, which is why he couldn't be here live, which is the only thing that prevented him from being here. As the former second in command of our largest state, he knows better than most the obstacles to realizing such an expensive proposition as this under the Strait Tunnel with Russia, at this time in the relationship of our two countries, especially. He sends his warmest regards, and we can now enjoy his video message, which truly has an Alaskan spirit. You'll notice he's outside and you can hear the airplanes floating above, but you can get a sense of being there in Alaska with him. Let's enjoy his speech.
Greetings from Alaska. I'm Meade Treadwell, former Lieutenant Governor of this big state, which is the closest connection to Russia via the Bering Strait. For most of my career, which has been in business, not just politics, I've worked to develop ties with our neighbors in the Arctic. In good times and in bad times between us. That includes strengthening economic, personal, and cultural relations with Russia. In the Arctic, many Russian citizens are not just neighbors with Alaskans. They are brothers, cousins, grandparents, family. Whether our nations are friends or adversaries, and we've seen both, sadly, several times in our lives, it's important to remember that we are all people. We want peace, and we love our children too. For many years as a project developer, a founder of and advocate for science institutions, technology companies, think tanks, both sides of the Bering Strait are getting closer to each other. We need to understand how and why. What markets are driving rail expansion, including continuing proposals to link the Alaska Railroad with Canada's rail system? What short lines, powered perhaps by new mines in the Brooks Range or in eastern Alaska near Tetlin or the Yukon, need bulk transport? What kind of driver is tourism? What global markets would be served by the convenience of rail? And where is international rail likely to be competitive with ocean shipping? Advancing kinds of aviation such as cargo drones or airships? And what kinds of technology research, from tunneling technology to maglev propulsion, are changing the ultimate economics of a project of this kind? Second, on environment. Rail construction in the Arctic has special issues. We need to protect permafrost from melting in order to keep rail structure solid. This is a problem northern roads, pipelines, and railroads have successfully faced for many decades. But note that President Biden just canceled a road to the Ambler region of Alaska in the Brooks Range with the argument that a road helps melt permafrost and contributes to climate change. I'm not so sure. On both the Alaska and Russian side, indigenous peoples also depend on natural capital resources, clean water, abundant fish, gathered berries, and much more. And understanding how to build a modern railroad to avoid impacts to critters on land like moose and marine mammals at sea is fundamental to any Arctic project. Third, on geopolitics. It's said that all politics is local. Regular interaction with communities this rail link would pass through is essential. A northern corridor in Alberta, for example, promoted by both businesses and members of the province's legislative assembly, is starting with First Nation discussions, making this crucial part of an intercontinental link happen, if it does happen, from the ground up. Circumpolar politics has been said before the Ukraine invasion to be Arctic exceptionalism, almost immune to the great power struggles between us. Sadly, a new era of trust is necessary, but a think tank now can convene players who have worked over a generation to build trust across our borders in the north. The record of the Arctic Council in involving transboundary indigenous groups, regional governments, and non-Arctic observer states who use resources from and transport routes through the Arctic from Europe, Asia, and North America is exceptional among many regional diplomatic efforts I've been part of or exposed to. So to the chairman and participants of this meeting, I can't be there in person today, but I look forward to crafting with many of you later a long-term research agenda, which will do the homework necessary to move this idea forward. As someone who's worked on Arctic transportation, aviation, pipelines, shipping, and rail much of my life, I thank you for keeping this discussion alive.
Thank you, Mr. Treadwell, and thank you for the beautiful background that we got a little taste of there in Alaska. He brought forth a lot of practical points about, things to keep in mind from the Alaskan perspective of what needs to be developed and taken into consideration as we pursue this project, and we truly appreciate his input on this project. I'd like to welcome our next speaker, which is Dr. Charles Yang. He is the chairman of Universal Peace Federation International's Bering Sea Tunnel Project. He's also the chairman of Universal Peace Federation International, the Washington Times Foundation, and the World Peace Road Foundation. Quite a list. He has been one of the key planners behind the Korea-Japan Tunnel since its inception in 1981, and the Bering Strait Tunnel since Reverend Sun Myung Moon and Dr. Hak Jahan Moon announced their support of this idea in 2005 and began to create a research administrative structure to support it. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Charles Yang for his speech.
Thank you, Kelly, for your generous introduction. Distinguished leaders and ambassadors for peace, and ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's good to see you here in this building. I came from Korea. I arrived last night. Yeah, thank you. Once again, thank you for joining this conference despite your busy schedules. I would like to express my gratitude to everyone, including those of you joining us online, for coming together today to discuss the Global Peace-Centered International Tunnel and Highway Project. Today, we are focusing on the Bering Strait Tunnel, and I extend my special thanks to the experts who have joined us, both online and in person as speakers. Especially, I would like to sincerely thank to Mr. Scott Spencer, Chief Project Advisor to the Intercontinental Railway, which co-sponsors this meeting, and Mr. Louis Sonny, former Executive Director of the International Railway Engineering Association, and Dr. Victor Rajbegin, who has joined us via Zoom all the way from Russia, and co-founder of the Intercontinental Railway, along with our other distinguished guests. The idea of a Bering Strait connector has been a topic of discussion for over a century, dating back to when President Abraham Lincoln first envisioned the concept of a bridge. However, progress was initially stalled due to the immense challenge of constructing approximately more than 2,000 miles of highway and railroad just to reach the shores of Bering Strait from both the Canadian and the Russian sides. In recent years, we have seen renewed interest and more serious discussions around this ambitious project. This was initiated by Reverend Dr. Son Myung-moon, founder of the Washington Times and Universal Peace Federation. He proposed in his keynote speech during the founding of the Universal Peace Federation in New York in 2005, that a bridge of underwater tunnel spanning the 53 miles Bering Strait be constructed. This bold initiative aimed to connect the major powers of the East and West, namely the United States and Russia. By doing so, Dr. Moon envisioned a final end to the Cold War, the cessation of conflicts and disputes, and the creation of a pathway toward a world of lasting peace. Furthermore, Dr. Moon visited Alaska for an on-site inspection. Following this visit, he established an international research team consisting of design and civil engineering experts, and set up the foundation in Korea and Japan. I had an honor of personally accompanying Dr. Moon on his visit to Alaska to inspect the Bering Strait. Additionally, Dr. Moon visited the city of Barrow, the northernmost city, around 1 hour north side from Anchorage, in the states of United States. At the Barrow Museum, we were able to see various pieces of evidence providing that two continents were once connected by land and were divided into two during the Ice Age about 13,000 years ago due to tectonic shifts. Above all, for this project to succeed, three key factors are essential. First, a political decision from the highest leaders of the United States and Russia, including the support and cooperation of the indigenous people. Second, in the economic feasibility and the investment capital related to logistic movement. The third, the technology required for completing the underwater tunnel. Just as the Panama Canal was constructed due to its economic benefit for logistics, this project must also promise significant economic advantage to the relevant countries. In fact, the Panama Canal reduced the distance from New York to San Francisco by more than half. Without the canal, the journey from New York around South America to San Francisco would be 17,000 miles. However, with the Panama Canal, the distance is shortened to 5,200 miles, opening a route that allows travel from the Atlantic to the Pacific in just one day. Currently, 6% of all global trade passes through the Panama Canal. Next, the key to success of the tunnel is above all technology. The world's longest tunnels, such as the Eurotunnel and Japan's Seikan Tunnel, were successfully completed in the 1980s. Already 40-some years passed. With even more advanced high-tech technologies available today, there should be no issues. Moreover, Dr. Moon proposed an underwater tunnel nearly 3 times longer than 53-mile Bering Strait tunnel. The almost 150-mile Korea-Japan undersea tunnel. On November 10, 1981, at the 10th International Conference on the Unity of the Science, held in Seoul, Korea, he proposed connecting Japan and Korea via this undersea tunnel, which would eventually link Tokyo through South and North Korea to China and Europe, creating a new Silk Road. This proposal received tremendous support from the conference attendees. At that time, more than 770 scholars from 190 countries worldwide, including over 10 Nobel laureates, participated in the conference and enthusiastically welcomed Dr. Moon's proposal. It has been said, those who open roads will prosper, while those who build walls will perish. When people and logistics move freely through roads, conflicts and fights naturally diminish. In fact, when the 33-mile undersea tunnel connecting the Dover Strait was constructed, linking the UK and France, 60% of the travelers between London and Paris began frequently commuting via the high-speed train Eurostar. This significantly alleviated the long-standing conflict between the two nations over the past several centuries. The Korea-Japan undersea tunnel and the Bering Strait tunnel are components of the Global Peace Road project, which aims to connect Cape Town in South Africa to Santiago in Chile, and from Tokyo through Seoul and Pyongyang, Beijing, and finally London. This project envisions a global village where the 5 oceans and 6 continents coexist and prosper as one big family. Indeed, it is a monumental project for peace and coexistence and permanent peace infrastructure. The proposal to the Korea-Japan tunnel was not merely a declaration. In 1982, the following year, the International Highway Construction Corporation was established as a legal entity in Japan. Over the next decade, significant funds were invested in conducting professional geological investigations and research along the anticipated land, ground, and underwater routes. Currently, a 600-meter investigation shaft has been drilled at Karachu in Kyushu, as you see the Dr. Jenkins' presentation, identified as the optional starting point on the Japanese side. The Korea-Japan Tunnel proposal has been officially mentioned several times by the presidents of both nations, making it a matter of national kind of discussion. Mr. Gajikuri, who is the chairman of the Korea-Japan Tunnel project, will provide a detailed report on this. Recently, under leadership of Dr. Yuzo Takeuchi, the Japan International Highway Foundation completed a comprehensive 1,100-page blueprint after significant financial investment. Last month, the World Peace Road Foundation invited Dr. Takeuchi to Korea, where he presented the technical aspects and the feasibility of the tunnel project, garnering substantial interest from experts in both countries. This master plan, developed over 4 decades from 1982 to 2023, employed aircraft and naval vessels to use ultrasound in extensive aerial and marine surveys. Based on this blueprint, the estimated budget for the Korea-Japan Tunnel is approximately $100 billion. Ladies and gentlemen, over the past 3 years of the pandemic, all of humanity has confirmed that we are one global family. We must seek ways to live together, to overcome divisions and conflict, and to foster harmony and prosperity beyond race, culture, religion, and borders. When these 2 tunnel projects are completed, they will signify the end of the East-West Cold War, divided between Northeast Asia and the United States and Russia, effectively ushering in a monumental step towards permanent peace for humanity. Through the valuable insights of today's panelists, I hope we can study this potential and work together to undertake this common task for humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Yang, for really painting this vision of what we're talking about here, and also the part that the governments need to play, that we all need to work together. I really appreciate the last point about these 2 tunnels representing the dissolution of so much conflict of the past. So this is something we truly have to pursue in this urgent time today. So for our next speaker, we're going to welcome Mr. Scott Spencer, who's the Chief Project Advisor for the Intercontinental Railway. He is a rail industry consultant with diversified management and consulting experience in every aspect of rail operations. His career has included service development and operations for freight railroads, high-speed rail, commuter rail, metros, and light rail transit in the United States, as well as internationally on such projects as the Philadelphia Airport Line, the Cairo Metro, and the Taiwan High-Speed Rail. As we know, railroads will be key in this project for traffic, for tourism, and trade on the international highway. Right before we bring Scott up, we're going to first watch a 2-minute preview of the video that Dr. Jenkins so warmly introduced to us, The Strait Guys, which also features Scott within the video. So let's enjoy this 2-minute video.
Hi, how you doing? I'm Scott with the Intercontinental Railway. The Intercontinental Railway is a 5,500-mile long railway that will link the existing systems that are in North America through Canada into Alaska, and then a 70-mile long tunnel under the Bering Strait to Russia and China. So really, this has the potential of being the Panama Canal of the 21st century.
Мы построили новый мост! Ура!
I hope to see that we are actually friends, not enemies. That we have much more in common than separate us. So it's important that Russia and the United States join each other and maintain the peace in the world.
I don't know, it's his dream, but it's a big headache for me. He's promoting that for how many years? 30 years or whatever?
I believe that if our presidents will make a decision about the project, we can build it very fast.
Actually, I'm finished. I don't want anything to do with you anymore.
But George, you need to understand something.
I am done with you, period.
Okay.
For the project.
I don't. This is difficult.
That's touching every time I see it. My late great friend, George Kamal. And did he say something very powerful? This is difficult, but that's why we're all gathered here in this room to do great things, no matter the difficulty, because it is so important for our world's future. Well, good morning. I'm so happy to see everyone here. Thank you for your efforts of coming from far and wide. And also, I know some people are tuning in via Zoom. I want to thank the Universal Peace Federation and the Washington Times for their vision and efforts to organize today's conference and luncheon at a time when many believe this is not a good time for Russia and the United States to work together on great projects in the midst of military conflict and sanctions. Confronting a crisis to create a mutually beneficial opportunity for peace is the best way to avoid a wider war. Waiting for a war to go away is not an urgency, is not an option. Thus, the urgency of now to take action to save lives and secure the peace that is vital for the greatness of all nations. I'd like to begin the urgency of taking action now by asking for a moment of silence to pray for peace in the world in each of our own way, for peace to prevail not only in the Middle East and in Ukraine, but also where war and conflict rages around the world. Thank you. As the chief project advisor of the Intercontinental Railway, I usually give remarks about the engineering, operating, and environmental characteristics of building an 8,000-kilometer long railroad linking the United States and Canada with Russia and China via the 100-kilometer long tunnel under the Bering Strait. Instead, I want to discuss the urgency of now, about how this project can be part of a mutually beneficial diplomacy initiative to end the war between Ukraine and Russia. War is a failure of diplomacy and the lack of love and respect for each other. Now, how does that fit into a sophisticated foreign policy approach of each country? Well, let's ask ourselves, what do we teach our children and grandchildren about the importance of love and respect to resolve their conflicts with siblings, schoolmates, and friends? We are now in the midst of graduation season at schools around the world. Many commencement speeches focus on the opportunity before the graduates to find a way in everything you do to leave the world a better place than you found it. But that opportunity is not just for the first few years after graduation. In the face of war and conflict, it is vital to approach diplomacy with love and respect, and the goal of leaving the world a better place than we found it. I know that vision would be shared by the co-founder of the Intercontinental Railway, the late George Kamal. In describing the scope, scale, and cost of the Intercontinental Railway and its centerpiece, the Bering Strait Tunnel, George would always point out the benefits it leaves to the world, a better place, which are reflected in the Intercontinental Railway logos of peace, progress, and prosperity. And by the way, as we work with all countries that would be benefiting here, we'd love to see their flags also and their languages mentioning the goals of this project: peace, progress, and prosperity. Fulfilling this vision now in the face of conflict can be accomplished for three reasons. Number one, the need for mutually beneficial diplomacy in a world filled with nuclear weapons. Number two, the need to replace the International Space Station as a symbol of international cooperation and mutual benefits. And three, avoid the major opportunity cost of not building the Intercontinental Railway and the Bering Strait Tunnel. So number one, the need for mutually beneficial diplomacy in a world filled with nuclear weapons. The current path in the war between Ukraine and Russia will tragically result in more deaths on both sides, risks of a wider war, and an uncertain end of the war. As the war continues, the risks of the war spreading or escalating into a nuclear conflict are no different than allowing a fire to burn and spread while arguing who started it, who is at fault, and who will be punished. With so much at stake, where is the love and respect of letting the fire burn? The urgency of now, the urgency of preventing an escalation into a nuclear crisis says that we must do everything to put the fire out now. Anyone who knows the lessons learned from the Cuban Missile Crisis knows that the midst of a nuclear crisis is a bad time to start negotiating. Throughout history, countries have always been prepared to fight a war 24 hours a day, but we have never changed diplomacy to reduce the risk of war, especially in the nuclear age. If countries are prepared to fight war 24 hours a day, we should develop a more sophisticated approach to prevent war and prepare and preserve peace with a diplomatic initiative to negotiate continuously around the clock, 24 hours a day. I have proposed a multilateral peace initiative involving China, Russia, Ukraine, and the United States to end the conflict in Ukraine in a mutually beneficial way. This would involve forming 3 crisis resolution teams, CRTs, in A, B, and C teams, working in 3 8-hour shifts, 24 hours a day, to negotiate a ceasefire and a mutually beneficial resolution. To involve experts that are in each country and their diplomats, the multilateral peace initiative negotiations would rotate weekly from Beijing to Moscow to Kiev and Washington. The benefits of the Bering Strait Tunnel would serve as a centerpiece for all countries to come to terms. Number 2, the need to replace the International Space Station as a symbol of international cooperation and mutual benefits. The ISS is a flying Nobel Peace Prize that goes around us every 90 minutes, whose success has continued throughout the war between Ukraine and Russia. The ISS is due to be decommissioned by 2030 because the infrastructure of the Intercontinental Railway and the Bering Strait Tunnel will have a useful life of at least 100 to 200 years. It is the best opportunity to bring the lasting benefits of international cooperation down to earth after the ISS is out of service. And number 3, the annual operating cost without the Intercontinental Railway is detrimental to world peace, progress, and prosperity. Considering the cost of war, the $100 billion plus cost of the Intercontinental Railway is a bargain. The ISS itself also costs over $100 billion, and it is temporary infrastructure that will be deorbited and destroyed. When you consider the cost to global commerce, international relations, and the environment, only 2 questions matter. What generation will lead the way to build the Intercontinental Railway and the Bering Strait Tunnel? And secondly, considering the remarkable peace, progress, and prosperity benefits, why wasn't it done sooner? And so I ask, with so much at stake, why wait? Let's confront the current crisis and create an opportunity to recover, rebuild trust, and rejuvenate global cooperation with the love and respect that we know can deliver the mutual benefits of peace, progress, and prosperity of all countries involved to develop the Intercontinental Railway and the Bering Strait Tunnel with the urgency of now. I am happy to know, as we've already heard, that the Universal Peace Foundation will be leading the way in forming the Bering Strait think tank and meeting the challenge of the urgency of now. Thank you. I'll take a couple of questions or respond to a couple of comments as Mrs. Moffett believes we have some time, I guess, for a couple of those, if that's of interest. All righty. Well, thank you again. I appreciate the opportunity. Oh, yes. Yes.
How is the response in Congress for this proposal? Not your
Not the
conflict-
multilateral peace initiative.
No, on the whole project of the Bering Strait.
I'll give you two parts to the answer. On the multilateral peace initiative, those have been confidential, efforts that I've reached out with the contacts, because throughout this project, those in Congress that I've known through my home state and the State Department, they've always known what I'm doing, where I'm going, and who I've met with. So there's no surprises. So that's been and so that whole process has just been an interesting. We want to see how this develops. No one really takes a leadership position. On the second thing about generally in Congress, I guess in some ways it's like what we all experienced in high school at a high school dance. Everybody likes the music. They want to dance with people, but they kind of hug the wall waiting to see, who's going to step out and start the dance. And so that's why I appreciate the opportunity, the urgency, and now. It's unfortunate that, we have a military conflict and the consequences of war, but we have to rise above that and get involved. So right now in Congress, it's ultimately coming down to the vision of leadership. And we've lost a lot of time without that vision, without that leadership. Yes.
Elaborate on the think tank. Internal think tank, would you elaborate on that, please?
Well, I'd like the Universal Peace Federation to speak to that later, because I know Eugene Hartnett has come all the way from Alaska to speak to that. But I should say, in discussing that, it really responds to urgency now, because, for instance, George Kamal and I, along with my friend, I can't wait to see here, Victor Razbegin and Joe Henry, another co-founder of the project, Lou Cerny, we've all been involved in this for over 30 years. And there's a large amount of information, documentation, research. Victor led some extensive research in Russia. So we want to gather this information, digitize it, and as it was alluded to, a think tank would involve the best in universities. And by the way, I've worked in other transportation, commercial transportation, and those at NASA told me we never would have made it to the moon without getting universities involved. So the idea of universities being involved in this think tank is a great way to get this project rolling.
Scott, back right here.
Yes. Yes, Larry.
Specifically, what agencies in the United States are in conversation with what agencies in Russia? Or is it just, I know you have the Intercontinental Railway, and Dr. Razbegin, who is going to speak to us from Russia. We're very much looking forward to that. But what government entities are in conversation, or are at least open to it? I think it's probably hard to talk right now, but.
Well, I don't know of recently, but I know over the years, there's been a number of overtures between our State Department and their diplomats. And George Kamal led a number of efforts, and Lou Cerny participated in that as well with Victor, between both countries. We've spent a number of time in countries. So while there wasn't always official government involvement, there was a lot of progress made with the real experts. But one other detail I'll share with you, because I've gotten this question many times about how this project can get started, particularly with those who would want to finance it, with the railroads that will want to be involved. No one wants to put themselves out there again when there's a risk of conflict. So I always point out how the ISS has worked so successfully. Most people don't even know that Russian citizens have spent time in the United States training and then flying to the ISS from Florida with our crews. So they are really a tremendous model of international cooperation. And likewise, Americans have continued to fly on Russian spacecraft. But ultimately, what we need is a intercontinental railway treaty amongst the key countries involved, particularly the United States, Canada, Russia, and China, so that there is a foundation that this project is going to proceed on these various terms. And in fact, that's what made the tunnel so successful. There was a treaty agreement between England and France. And with that in place, it gives people confidence that we are definitely going to team up and work together. And we spoke to that. In fact, one of the scenes in the film was a rare invitation we had as Americans, again, through our friend Victor Razbegin, you'll see in a minute. We had an invitation to speak before the Russian Duma. And they all agreed this is the way that we need to move together with this mutually beneficial treaty. All right. Yes, one more?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
My name
Good
is
morning.
Mary Thorne. I worked for the State Department for many years till I retired about 10 years ago. And I'm so inspired about this multilateral negotiations idea. I mean, watching the six-party talks, for all those years, where we're going to be, what country, when, to have something that would go from country to country, be going 24 hours, because the world works 24 hours. It's very, very inspiring. And I know you said a lot of that talk is confidential, but I really hope it goes forward.
Well, thank you. And I have to say, I was inspired by many citizens we know who are volunteer firefighters, first responders. They never attack a crisis part-time. They're there until the fire is out. They're there throughout the recovery. And yet, think about this. If we ever entered a room where you had two adversaries pointing a gun at each other, would you say, hey, I'll get back to you when the conditions are better and we'll work this out? I mean, but unfortunately, in this civilization, we have nuclear weapons pointed at each country and other countries, and we lose sight of that risk. That's why I say anybody who learns anything about the Cuban Missile Crisis, that was a bad time to learn how to negotiate in a crisis. So why not bite a problem now before it bites us? And yes, you're right. A 24-hour approach to diplomacy puts in the urgency of now of resolving it in a mutually beneficial way. Yes, Dr. Jenkins.
Have you met Elon Musk about the project?
No, I've never had an opportunity, although I've met him on a couple occasions, and it was so brief that I didn't, we were at a function for SpaceX, and I just was talking about that form of transportation. I should have brought this up.
And one more thing, I understand there is some support in Alaska, and Meade Treadwell was telling me about it. I mean, people see the vision. And I think it will come to pass. I mean, we had experience with the Japan tunnel, total opposition, total rejection from Korea and Japan. But as they kept working on it, then different people become aware. So James Rogers, who's a well-known international investor, visited that Japan tunnel project, and it changed him completely. He believes it will happen. He's going to put his, support behind it.
There's nothing like being there, but you make a good point, because if we had a breakthrough in these negotiations and made a commitment to go forward, and again, I'm going to yield the floor to my friend Victor here shortly, we could start moving. And I was fortunate to be at the end of the rail line that's been built in Russia, in Yakutsk, and they want to build towards Magadan and eventually to the Bering Strait. Likewise, we want to build. So let's say we agree today, we're going to be spending 10 or 15 years just building thousands of miles of railroad. You cannot begin that tunnel until the tracks are there because of mobilizing the tunnel boring equipment and other materials. So over the next decade and a half, we can work on rebuilding the relationship between these countries. If for some reason we're not ready, we're okay. will get there, but then Alaska benefits. We know how important this railway is for Alaska. It's unbelievable when you look at it. They basically only have a 3-day supply of food because everything comes through Anchorage, and if they lost Anchorage in a earthquake, the port of Anchorage, the rail line would be the only way to, keep Alaska going because it's through a non-earthquake zone. So there's a lot of interim benefits, just as we would know in the tunnel between Japan and Korea, to hopefully advance that dialogue between North and South Korea. Starting in these steps is the direction to go. Yes. Well, again, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you. Especially, I appreciate the model of the ISS and creating partnerships even in this difficult time of conflict in our history. As Scott mentioned, we are going to welcome our guest speaker from Russia live on Zoom, and we're hoping all the technical difficulties will disappear. Dr. Viktor Vatsbakhin is a Russian citizen who, as the co-founder of the Intercontinental Railway, is the counterpart of Scott Spencer on the east end of this great mega project. He is currently director of the Interdepartmental Center for Integrated Regional Transport Projects and was previously vice chairman of the Council for Productive Forces at the Russian Ministry of Economic Development. We will have a live Q&A, so if you have questions during Dr. Vatsbakhin's presentations, please jot them down and we will have a chance to interact with him. So let's bring up our live speaker from Zoom. Let's give him a round of applause while we're doing that. Very good.
Dear colleagues, good evening in Moscow times. I'm very glad to participate in this meeting, and I would like to bring my sincere gratitude to the organizers and sponsors of today's meeting, which is so important for the continuation and the development of our joint activities to promote the project of creating a multimodal transcontinental transport corridor crossing the Bering Strait. The project aimed at creating a free and sustainable transport link between the two continents and providing almost unlimited opportunities for the development of real peaceful cooperation between the largest world powers for the common good and prosperity throughout the world. The system of global transport communications and international transport corridors is formed as a result of consistent iterative steps for a solution of two main tasks. First of all, is ensuring communication links between the densely populated areas of the main world civilizations, and also the development of new territories. These tasks, in turn, reflect the natural dominance of the evolutionary development of mankind, the increasing need for resources, comprehensive information exchange, and increasing lightening and branching technological chains of production and consumption on the base of broad global cooperation and specialization. At the beginning of the present century, the basic infrastructure for ensuring global transport links had been mainly developed based on a system of seaports and railways for transporting significant volumes of cargo and passengers over long distances, in comparison with an extensive network of highways, infrastructure of air transportation, and pipelines. There are no many fundamentally new links on a global scale in this system, even hypothetically. And of course, the project of connecting the continents of North America and Eurasia via Bering Strait is unique in its potential. It was not difficult to see this from the maps already presented to you in the video you have seen. It was prepared for the World Expo in Shanghai. And not too much change from this time. The railway main line being created will actually close the unified fault railway system, providing the shortest land connection between the significant part of the regions of the United States, Mexico, Canada, Russia, China, and a number of other Asian countries. Simultaneously, it creates conditions for the development and involving in the global economic turnover the huge territories of northeastern Russia, Alaska, with a total area of more than 1 million square kilometers. During the long time of existence of this project, its technical feasibility and economical efficiency have been comprehensively investigated and to nowadays absolutely confirmed. A significant number of international conferences and public presentations were held at various governmental, public, corporate, financial, and technical structures and organizations. Taking into account the conducted research, including preliminary engineering in geological surveys and technical design studies, the modern vision of the project includes the tunnel itself with a total length of about 100 or to 110 kilometers. The geological condition for this tunnel is quite favored by a calm and shallow underwater relief, a sufficient layer of strong, slightly fractured and purely watered rocks, as well as the presence of 2 islands along the traverse, and also the project includes the railway mainline. Newly created part of this mainline will be about 6,000 kilometers, including about 4,000 as the territory of the Russian Federation. However, we have taken into account that the railway construction in the northeast of Russia is going now, and the distance this distance may be reduced by almost half by the time the project starts. In addition, the possibility of including intercontinental power line capable of ensuring the coordinated operation of combined power systems on 2 continents, as well as a combined highway, is being considered. The possibilities of laying pipeline structure have been considered, but at the moment they have not received sufficient justification. As Dr. Young correctly noted, like the Panama Channel, even the pure economic benefits of logistic transportation along the new transportation corridor will be very significant, and to provide a return of investment for 15 to 20 years from the start of transportation, according to various researchers who present their version of financial and economical models. It's a very nice indicator for projects of this scale. However, in a certain sense, I would rather compare this project with projects not the Panama Channel, but for projects of space exploration, or the creation of CERN, for example, which also involve fruitful international cooperation and their long-term consequences and opening opportunities much more wider than what we could imagine when initiating them. Unfortunately, answering the question why the project is not being implemented if it's so wonderful, I have to state that almost 2 centuries since the appearance of real technical prerequisites for the formulation of the long-standing idea for restoring the land connection between continents as a real technical project. In fact, the only reason up for today remains the political impossibility of the potential participating countries to overcome mutual distrust and fears that some of neighbors countries will receive more benefits while others will face greater risks. And alas, this obstacle has not become less significant by now. In a number of cases, like at the beginning of the 20th century, on the basis of active actions of an international company founded in Russia by the initiative of French engineer Loic de Labelle, and also during the Second World War by the initiative of Winston Churchill, supported by Franklin Roosevelt. Also, and finally, in the middle of 19th last century, when on the initiative and with the direct participation of the international non-profit organization in the hemispheric Bering Strait Tunnel and Oil Group created by George Hummel. This project was included in the list of priority projects by the well-known Commission of Russia-American Cooperation, Gore Chernomyrdin, managed to come close to its implementation. And it's very important that despite the extremely difficult and turbulent political events of recent times, UPF continues its systematic and consistent efforts to implement the idea of creating a bridge or tunnel crossing through the Bering Strait, which had been many times publicly voiced and formally supported by the founder of this organization, religious leader and peace activist, Dr. Moon. Dear colleagues, the suggestion of the organizers, my performance was conditionally called Russians' readiness and willingness. I have to say that the project of creating a transcontinental highway with a tunnel through the Bering Strait surely can take place only as a truly joint international project. And it makes sense to talk about the readiness and desire of one of the parties only in the context of at least preliminary positive intentions on the part of all major participants, as well as a certain degree of mutual trust and readiness for joint activities. Maybe nowadays not the best time for it. However, research on the main components of the projects has never stopped in Russia. And the activities of the Russian branch of the international non-profit organization ABS-TRG, which was organized in Russia with participation of governmental and non-governmental structures, have repeatedly received the necessary official support, including the organization of Russian international conferences, seminars, and special technical expeditions. And the results of such kind of activities, we here in Russia, we time by time public. Additionally, Russia has, I have to mention that Russia has a large railway construction program in the east of the country, especially nowadays. The railway has reached Yakutsk, and active work is currently underway to continue in the direction of Magadan. So it is just along the road of the proposed transcontinental highway. And so the total length of new constructed transcontinental mainline will be reduced almost 2 times in the future. Work has also begun on the reconstruction and strengthening of the Skovorodino-Reynova railway branch line, with the proposed construction of a railway crossing over the river Amur. And this crossing located between the Jalinda in Russia and Mohe in China. In the future, it will be the shortest access of transcontinental mainland to the territory of China. In general, in Russia, the focus on global cooperation has always been supported at all levels. I like very much the succinctly formula of former Alaska Governor Walter Hickel, with whom I had great pleasure to communicate closely. Why war? Why not a big project? And I would like to end with this formula. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ratsvegan. It's very fascinating to hear about the development on your side. We are going to open it up, if it's okay with you, to some questions from the audience. So if you have a question, please be ready to raise your hand.
Where's the camera? Right there, is that, Otmar, is that the camera? Okay. Dr. Ratsvegan, thank you very much for taking the time and the effort. There's been a considerable amount of effort has gone into create just this simple connection with you through a Zoom call. And one thing that has become very apparent is that, to me, is that it has to get beyond Zoom. There needs to be interaction. There needs to be a neutral place. I don't know if any place is neutral, but there needs to be a neutral place where people who want to explore these possibilities can gather and discuss. It would be, I think, a combination of private sector and government sector people and organizations. So I'm wondering if you have thought about where the next steps would take us, where we might meet to continue this, so that this little 3-hour meeting we are having, it doesn't just become the end of it. I think, and people, as I think you said, people say this is not the right time, but I think we have to begin before it is the right time. Otherwise, I think the right time will not come. So my question to you is, what is the next step? Where can we meet?
Thank you very much for your question. I'm also up to now more like the conversation face to face than distance conversation, long distance conversation. And I also agree that nowadays maybe not the best time for realizing the project, but of course we have to meet and we have to continue the work for the project, especially now, because I believe that it will be one of the first really big projects when the turbulence times, I hope, will overcome. And on your question, I thought with my colleagues to organize the international conference on the Bering Strait next year here in Russia. I'm not absolutely sure that it's a natural place, but I know that the idea of this project really supported here in Russia, and we can organize this conference at the good level, the same as we had organized this conference about 10 years ago. So if it will be possible, I will I will welcome all of you to international conference in Moscow or maybe St. Petersburg. I don't know exactly now, next year. But the official announcement about this I could make only in autumn this year, I hope.
Victor, hello. I'm not going to take up time because there's so many other people want to ask questions. but I
Hello,
just wanna say
nice
hello
to see
my
you.
friend. Hello to my friend, and thank you for all you're doing for this project and keeping things moving in Russia. And I know our friend George Kamal would be so excited and proud of what we're doing here today. And as you've heard, they want to advance a think tank to continue all the efforts. So wish you well and look forward to seeing you in Russia again soon. I like that idea of the conference.
Hello, Dr. Razbegan. I'm Dr. Michael Jenkins. I'm the president of the Washington Times Foundation and the Universal Peace Federation. We're honored to have you with us here today, along with the experts from the United States. My question is, what do you think is the best way to bring about more dialogue on this topic between Russia and the United States? Would it be through the scholars first, or has there been support from the Russian officials? There has been some support from American officials, but I think that what's your thinking on what could open up the door for more dialogue, more advancement on the cooperation between the U.S. and Russia on this important project to cross the Bering Strait?
It's a good question, but today I think the best way try to continue our contacts on the non-governmental level, but with governmental support. And as I said, one of the following steps, on my view, should be the international conference. And we tried to involve in this conference like before, 10 years ago, all of the main Russian ministries, Ministry of Transportation, Ministry of Economic Development. And I hope that this time these key ministers also will participate in the conference, but I'm not sure that any of official structures now is ready to invite officially some governmental structure from United States. And I have to say that I believe that not only United States, but also China should have to participate, and Canada and some of other countries. And I'm not sure that now our governmental structures are ready to organize such kind of meeting on official level. But in a good a good non-governmental level, we could involve the governmental structures, and I think that representatives of the governmental structures from other countries also could participate.
Thank you. Okay, we'll take one more question.
Yes, please.
Hello, sir. Thank you so very much for your presentation. In the introduction this evening, or this afternoon, one point that was brought out was the role that indigenous peoples will be playing in this project. In the US and in Canada, there are recognized nations, and indigenous peoples have a significant voice and also a say, an influence in things that happen. I'm curious if you could help us understand what the situation is with indigenous peoples there in Russia. Do they have some role to play? Do they have a voice? Do they have territories that that they are recognized as having any kind of sovereignty over? Could you speak to us about that?
Громче скажи. Oh, yes, if I understood well, the small nations in our north, from the very beginning of creation of Russian branch of Inter-Hemispheric Bering Strait Tunnel and Railroad on governmental organization, from the very beginning, the representatives of small nations were involved in the work of the Russian branch of the IBSTRG. And up to now, we continue the contact with the representatives of these small nations, especially we have some very constructive contacts in Yakutia and Chukotka also. And generally, I have to say that the idea of project is supported by the main part of these small nations, as far as I could understand. So I don't see a big problem. I think that this project really would be interesting for these small nations and provide their development, and don't hesitate their how to say their own traditions and style of life.
Thank you, Dr. Victor. My name is Akbar Khwaja, former World Bank official. My question is, if you could comment on timeline of a key milestone. Thank you.
Какой таймлайн, причем достижения следующих шагов?
I'm not sure that I understand your question right. You mean keystone in the preparation of the project, in the work for the project, or in the realization of the project? Because nowadays I couldn't say something definite about the timeline for the realizing of the project, because we have to overcome the main how to say, the main line. We have to legalize this project in all countries. We have to take the support from the governmental level of all countries. So what I can say is that our efforts now here in Russia, and I think all efforts for this project should be directed for following studies and for explaining for people and for governments the extreme necessity of this project for world, especially nowadays. So, as I said, the research program and studying the various sides of and various features of this project is continuing now here in Russia. And there is a working group, and we join people from some institutes and from project, from design organization. And we are trying to prepare and to actualize the report for the preliminary stage of investment. So it's for the future investments. So we are trying to continue the research, and we are trying to restart the international meeting and international international meeting and intervention and joint work for this project on our level.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Vatsbacon. Let's give him a warm American round of applause, joining us all the way from Russia. Thank you so much. Is anybody learning a lot from today's conference? Yes, we still have a little bit more to learn. So I'm going to welcome up our next speaker, Mr. Eugene Harnett. In addition to serving as Executive Director of the Universal Peace Federation in Alaska, Mr. Harnett is a businessman in real estate and web development. He also serves as Chief of Staff to a member of the Alaska State House of Representatives. And finally, he serves his community as a pastor. All this varied experience has taught him much about government, lawmaking, and organization. He's now pulling together plans to create a think tank to serve as a research hub and center of thought leadership for the Bering Strait connector between the US and Russia. And that's his topic this morning, inviting you to be part of the new Bering Strait think tank. Let's welcome up Mr. Harnett.
Thank you, Kayleigh. You read that just as I didn't write it. I want to thank everyone for coming here today and thank for your question, because you stumped us. What is our timeline? That's a very good question. And let's just say next year, we'll get it started. I'd like to talk today about the think tank. First of all, I want to begin with a quote from President Theodore Roosevelt. When he visited the Panama Canal, it was brought up, under its construction, he applauded it by saying, "This is one of the great works of the world. It is a greater work than you yourselves realize at the moment." But let us remind ourselves of all the challenges and obstacles to build the Panama Canal. 22,000 people died in the process, mostly of typhoid and yellow fever. The French company that was in charge of it went bankrupt after 10 years. And when America took it over, it went over budget 3 times and went through 3 presidential administrations before the first ship went through. So this is to preface what I'm going to propose. Let's be honest, the Bering Strait tunnel is a project of a magnitude that makes the Panama Canal look like child's play. We have long been toying with this idea of the Bering Strait tunnel, like you and many visionaries before us. So to succeed, we need an intense desire. It must be something we think about before we go to bed at night. something we think about when we wake up in the morning. And we must build momentum like this. After years and years of study, talking about it, preparing for it, raising awareness, and yes, raising money. And we must have a fortitude to see over the horizon. That you might even say we must seize the horizon. We must seize it in our very hand. So in a way, our senses, we must be all in. Like being on a starting five on a basketball team. You're all in. We must be very inquisitive, hungry to learn all about this, alert to opportunities, immune from disappointments. There'll be many on the way. Many things will thunder and flood our hopes. So we must be, I think, a little bit like Scott, bold and unceasing. Like if you heard those who built the continental railways across America were like that. They put their life and their money on the line. So as an avenue to get there, I propose the Bering Strait think tank. A think tank is a place to freely think about this grand idea. It's a place of gestation, like a womb, to nourish all its wants, its needs. This project is like, it's full of cabinets and drawers and closets and boxes of items to be addressed. So to pick up all those aspects, we need to picture our thoughts and put them on a mind map, so to speak. So the think tank, this is a think tank. The think tank is the yeast to make the dough rise. Just a little bit makes the entire wad of dough rise. So the think tank could eventually become formalized as an advisory board or strategy council. It's a beginning point to come together for unified action. So the think tank will align with the vision of the peace road through the impetus and education provided by the Universal Peace Federation. So let us invite the leaders of business, the leaders that are already existing in the Bering Strait strata, the railway interests. Let us invite those who've already done years of research. Let's invite the university community. Those who have put a lot of work into this should be recognized for that work, and we shall promote the peaceful purposes of this project and involve us as equal partners. Several years ago, we mentioned Congressman Don Young. I asked him about this project. He was the chairman of the Transportation Committee in Congress at one point, and he said he presented this idea to them. And at that time, he told me it was impossible to get it through Congress, to authorize any funding for it, because there was no international pressure that existed. There's no reason to do this. If China and Russia, though, for instance, along with Japan and Korea and Canada, were promoting this project, the United States Congress would be obliged to get involved. So when that time comes to receive funding for the United States Congress, it would be imperative to have a place, a credible place, a trusted organization structured to lead that project. So this is, I believe, one goal of the Bering Strait think tank: to create a vehicle that can be trusted, respected, and relied upon when those initial funds are dispensed. Another reason for this think tank, putting aside all the financial obstacles and the technological issues, Crossing the Bering Strait is really fraught with a maze of issues. We mentioned some, the indigenous people, the native lands that have to be crossed. Environmental impact is going to be huge. Regulations and permitting, you know, the geopolitical part of it. International agreements need to be put together. In the railroad across the United States, land speculation grew. Oh, that was wild, right? Also, in the northern part, there's a lack of infrastructure. So how do you actually house people to work on it even? So you need to build government incentives. There's a lot of issues that need to be addressed. Ultimately, the long-term operation and maintenance of this project. And what if, and this is Meade Treadwell's question, what if the feasibility study stinks? What if it doesn't pencil out? Will we still do it? So these topics the think tank should begin to tackle. And as you know, there's no railway even between Canada and Alaska. So you and I have met people who are envisioning this project. We're sitting next to them right now. But individually, we are impractical. And we'll remain to be at a loss, as they say, put the rubber to the road, or I could say the wheels to the metal, or the metal to the track. We must find a way to coalesce into what I would call a mastermind group. We all have something to participate in. So the type of glue that I believe the Universal Peace Federation provides is this type of glue for such a mastermind or for such a think tank. We offer a higher purpose, a peaceful purpose, and a world of purpose connected to our Creator, our Heavenly Parent, who wishes this project to be successful. Right? Don't you think so? It's not just us. We're not moving mountains. God is going to move mountains through us. So this is a cooperative alignment, and this project will become more than just an idea. Anecdotally, Walter J. Hickel, former governor of Alaska, former Secretary of Interior, he was a good friend of Meade Treadwell. Meade Treadwell is his protege. But Governor Hickel, he said that, and I'm going to paraphrase, a formal organization is a formidable place to get things done. There's a lot of red tape, bureaucracy. So he said, but amongst a circle of friends who can BS with each other about their ideas, that's where those ideas get their legs. So that's the hope of this think tank. It can and ought to be an informal body at first, because then it can be most potent. We can put our ideas really in potential. So I propose you to join me and the other Peace Federation leaders to meet quarterly, at least in the beginning, in person or on teleconference calls, and to report our individual progress as we grapple in a real way with this enormous, historically significant project of building the Peace Road across the Bering Strait. Finally, I want to close to emphasize a point that Abraham Lincoln made about chopping down a tree. He said if he only had 5 minutes to chop down this tree, he would take the first 3 minutes to sharpen his axe. There's a term for this. Think slow, act fast. This term, think slow, act fast, was introduced to me in a recent book by a Dane, Bent Flyberg. I probably mispronounced his name. Bent, that's his name, he is the world's leading mega project expert. And he wrote a book called How Big Things Get Done. and I encourage you to read it. He took what Abraham Lincoln said and coined it as think slow, act fast, as opposed to think fast, act slow. And I'll give you an example. There are many examples of big projects that were rushed, often for political expediency. In other words, fast thinking went into the front end, but those projects ended up taking much, much more time because they had to redo them, they had to fix their mistakes, and they had to overrun their budgets in the process. In other words, their action became slow. There's a lot of examples of that. One is the Panama Canal. Ferdinand de Lesseps, who built the Suez Canal, said, sure, we can do it in Panama. And he went over there to Panama, and it took a long, long time. And he miserably failed. And they eventually handed it over to the Americans. So he emphasized the approach for a big project is to put enormous care and effort into the planning, think slow part, to ensure delivery is smooth and swift. So I close with this. Think slow, act fast. The Bering Strait think tank is the place just to do that, to think slow, a place to think out all the processes before rushing to break ground. So I hope you will join with me in this grand adventure, and let's break out our thinking taps together. Thank you.
Thank you, Eugene, and I'm sure those who would like to discuss more with him, please approach him during lunch and at the closing of our program today. We want to recognize a special guest who's here with us today, Congressman Bob McEwen. He is the chair of the Council on National Policy. Welcome, Congressman. Thank you. We'd love to hear a few words from you during lunch if you're able to share with us, but we're really grateful for your presence today. So we have another speaker who we're going to welcome at this time, Mr. Louis Cerny. He has been involved in railways since the early 1960s and is the former executive director of the American Railway Engineering Association. He has worked for several large railway companies, usually in the engineering design part of things, and has helped design large-scale steel bridges. He is a co-recipient of the U.S. patent for a system for controlling car speeds in classification yards. I tell you this to let you know that Mr. Cerny understands much about building railroads in the most harsh conditions, such as permafrost. Although retired technically, he's still very active as a consultant on tracks and bridges for most of the U.S. railroads. Let's welcome up Mr. Louis Cerny.
First, let me thank Dr. Jenkins for inviting me here to address this group. This project, I think, would be the most significant example of Russian and American cooperation achievement since Russian and American armies joined at the Elbe River in Germany on April 26, 1945. But instead of a military victory, we can envision Russians and American tunnel workers meeting in a victory of peace at a point under the Bering Strait as they complete a railroad tunnel that will join by land transportation the world's 5 largest continents. A railroad connecting the continent of North America and Asia and their rail networks will be of great benefit to the world's future. A railroad via the Bering Strait has several advantages over ocean shipping between Eastern Asia and North America that can help provide financial justification for the project. Let's consider shipping a container from an inland city in Eastern Russia or China to an inland city in the United States. Let's use Beijing to Chicago as an example. The first advantage of using the railroad is that it would save 2 land-to-water transfers. The container now has to move by land from Beijing to a port such as Tianjin, and then go by ship to a port such as Los Angeles, and then by rail to Chicago. These land-water transfers can be expensive and especially time-consuming when the loading and unloading of large container ships is considered. The train can make one continuous trip, and the difference between Russian track gauge and the gauge that is standard in North America, China, and Korea can be taken care of by various designs of variable gauge bogies or vehicles using dual gauge track. The second advantage is that an all-rail route will be considerably shorter than the rail-water route. As you've seen from the many maps here, because of the Great Circle route used by the railroad, the container would have less distance to travel. A straight line between Beijing to Chicago actually goes north of the proposed tunnel location. In other words, we're not going out of the way to go north to the Bering Strait and then coming back down south. We're going the straight way in two ways. The third advantage of the all-rail route is speed. A 4-day schedule for containers from Harbin, China to Edmonton, Alberta is possible using running speeds of 70 miles an hour, averaging 55 miles an hour. 3 days would get from Edmonton to northeastern Russia, where connections could be made to the railway main lines in Russia. Edmonton has high-capacity rail connections to the rest of North America, and Harbin has high-capacity connections to the rest of China. These 3- and 4-day transit times are much shorter than those achieved by the fastest ocean container ships. My understanding is the most expensive premium ocean service is 10 days. I think, we've been talking about the Peace Road. And trains, including those carrying highway vehicles, such as in the English Channel Tunnel, can run at the same speed as the freights I was talking about to try to maximize capacity of the tunnel. And those trains hauling highway vehicles can be thought of as part of the Peace Road. I think that when we talk about a tunnel from New York to London, a road from New York to London, that the English Channel Tunnel is considered part of that road, even though the vehicles are actually carried by rail through the tunnel. And I think the same would be appropriate for the Bering Strait. And how, we've talked about the ecology, when we're talking here about a double-track electrified railroad. Electric trains powered by renewable energy will reduce the need for fossil fuel-powered ships. Less ships will mean less disturbance of marine life and less coastal areas needed for port facilities. The tunnel will cause no visible changes to the Bering Strait. So this tunnel and railroad project sounds very beneficial, but can it actually be built? And I think other speakers have talked about that when we compare this project to the rail tunnel under the English Channel from France to England, we find that the Bering Strait tunnel is no deeper than the English Channel tunnel, and because of the 2 islands in the Bering Strait, the longest continuous underwater distance is no longer than with the English Channel tunnel. The Bering Strait is not a highly seismic zone, and as you've heard the comments of Mr. Kamal from the past, that the rock geology does not appear to present any particular problems. And about the permafrost, permafrost is something that's been handled from an engineering standpoint. Certainly the railroad to Lhasa, Tibet, was more challenging because that was on a borderline permafrost situation, which is more difficult from an engineering standpoint than where the permafrost is more constant. So, and it also should be mentioned that the alignments that have been proposed nowhere go north of the Arctic Circle. This is not an Arctic railroad. And also I believe the highest mountain pass on the whole route is only 4,000 feet. So I know you saw some of those pictures of gigantic mountains there, but those are not in the way of the rail route. And even if they were, of course, there's ways to handle that. So there's no reason this railroad can't be built. It's not a mission to Mars. It has many unknowns, and it's a very large project, but one that can be confidently engineered. I think it's important, too, to understand how much a double-track electrified railroad can carry. We're talking with the new innovations of distributed power, where you basically have the locomotives distributed throughout the train so that you don't have high stress, stress forces in the train itself, you could get up to 160,000 TEUs. That's a 20-foot equivalent unit, a 20-foot container. And that compares, so you're talking about, for both tracks, 320,000 TEUs per day, which compares to 150,000 TEUs in the Suez Canal, about 75,000 each direction. Those are figures from 2018. And in terms of bulk freight, a capacity has been reached of over 1 million tons a day in the United States, like in the Powder River Basin on a single track. So the talks of on a double track railroad having a capacity of 600 million tons a year is realistic. And 600 million tons a year is the maximum capacity of the Panama Canal with proper water levels with the third lock. So we're talking about a facility here that can carry, things like the Suez Canal and the Panama Canal. This is a major transportation facility. And in addition to Russia and the United States, the railroad would be directly beneficial to Canada, China, Korea, and other places. The Chinese have just finished the railroad in the last few years to Laos, so that's a new direct rail connection that would be, or a thing that would be connected directly by rail to the Bering Strait Tunnel. And so, with an international railroad connecting North America and Asia, Alaska and Northeast Russia can envision a future where they are on an artery of international commerce comparable to the Suez or Panama Canal, allowing excellent access to international markets for their products and a prosperous population with dependable jobs. In closing, let me say that we all understand that great projects take time, and that we all understand that a railroad connecting Asia and North America via a tunnel under the Bering Strait will be one of the greatest civil engineering projects in history. Perhaps a target date for completion of the project could be April 26th, 2045, when Russian and Americans again, a century later, meet in triumphant accomplishment in the cause of peace. Thank you.
Yeah, very fascinating, the feasibility and the practical parts of putting together such a project like this. I think it's safe to say we have happily married both the vision and the practicality of this project today. Are you feeling well informed and hopeful about this type of project? Are you also feeling a little bit hungry? I can smell the food out there, so. We're gonna have lunch and invite an invocation for that lunch. And during lunch, we'll hear just a few more remarks and also the final video presentation from our sister tunnel between Japan and Korea. So I'd like to welcome up, yes, Dr. Jenkins. I apologize. We're gonna first take a group photo. You have to wait a little bit longer for the food. Very important before we rush out with our food. So Otmar's going to come up here to take our photo. Yes, great. Everybody can turn your chairs to face the front. No, we're going to. Where is Otmar going to stand? Actually, Otmar's going to stand in the back and take a picture. Our photographer is going to take the photo from the back. I apologize, everybody. That means we will have to turn around, get a little bit of exercise before we eat. We want to make sure that we get our live audience on Zoom in the photo as well. That's why we're taking the photo from this angle. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, those on Zoom, please turn on your video so they can see you. Thank you.
Maybe those who are on the edge, if you can try, you can even just stand behind closer so we make sure you make it in the photo. I think those. Thank you very much, everybody. Now we have photographed this historic conference for today. I'd like to welcome up Bishop Dr. Edward Barnett to give our invocation. He is the pastor of Greater Grace Family Ministries. Let's welcome up Bishop Barnett. Welcome.
Good morning and thank you. It is truly an honor and a privilege to be here. Just before I say a prayer, first of all, let's put our hands together if you feel privileged for being in the room today. The information given to us should really be passed out to scientists across the country, because they would agree that all the presenters were, in fact, totally correct and inspiring. So it was electrifying and elucidating. Last, true parents picked the right person for the right time for the right project. I would like to thank Dr. Michael Jenkins and Dr. Young, the chairman of UPF and Washington Times. Come on. Their vision, their synergistic energy, and what they have done to amalgamate and pull people together is just phenomenal. Dr. Jenkins, I just have to say this before I pray. Your micro and your macro demonstration of leadership is so impeccable and inspiring. I personally want to thank you. My wife and I personally were excited to be here just because of what we have seen you demonstrate. From riding in little vans from city to city across this nation to going from continent to continent, spreading peace and the message that Mother Moon and Father Moon has put out should be commended. We have a leader that just does not dictate, but he demonstrates. And I want to say thank you. Last, to all the gentlemen, especially my new cousin that I just met from Alaska, Eugene Hurnett. If you take the H and put a B there, it would be Barnett. And if I took the B out and put an H there, I would be a Harnett. All right, so it was wonderful to meet you. Very wonderful, and to Scott for making all of us realize that not only the intel, but also there must be conscious prayer at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end of this project to balance it out toward progress and prosperity and peace for everyone. Let's pray. Heavenly Parent, we thank you for this moment, this room, for lifting us up to higher levels of possibility and bringing about peace in this world. Thank you for resonating in our hearts and causing us to see it can be done. Now bless this food. Thank you for all the safe travels here. And we believe you for safe travels back to our prior destinations. Bless those who prepared the food and bless the rest of our fellowship. In this day we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. If I may say one more thing, Dr. Jenkins, just real quick, because while I sat here, something came to my heart. And I haven't coined it, but surely you can use it. And that is that this project, this synergistic project, is the golden thread that will pull all humanity together. Thank you.
Beautiful words and beautiful prayer. Thank you so much, Dr. Barnett. So ladies and gentlemen, we will now enjoy lunch. Lunch is located right out here. Also, for those who are not familiar with the building, the restrooms are just down the hall to the left. You can find both the men's and women's restrooms there. So we'd like to welcome our speakers table to head to get their lunch first. And everyone else may follow afterwards. We invite you to come and enjoy lunch in here for a few more remarks and a video presentation. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention, please? Just a moment, if I could have your attention, please. Congressman Bob McEwen has to depart, but I didn't want to miss him just saying hello.
Thank you, Michael. I'm enough of a politician to know that one shouldn't, pardon me, one shouldn't give a speech when everyone's ready to eat. So I'll just say I'm honored and delighted to be here. Every great accomplishment that we've ever dreamed about. There were people that were doubters and didn't know. I still remember when Ronald Reagan said, why should we sit here and allow people to send missiles and hit us? Why don't we shoot them down before they come? And the vast majority of thinkers said, why, you can't do such a thing. He said, you can't hit a bullet with a bullet. And his response was very interesting. His response was, we're Americans. And lo and behold, we've been able to put men on the moon, invent the airplane, and do all these things. And so when those people who can't see, they need people who have vision to see. And congratulations for what you're doing. Thank you. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you. Let's enjoy lunch. Special welcome to Miss Jan Duplain. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that it's on. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're enjoying your meal. At this time, we are going to watch a video presentation about the sister tunnel to this project, which is the tunnel between Korea and Japan. We've heard some of it, some information about it already. But this is Dr. Masayoshi Kajikuri, who's the chairman of the Japan-Korea Tunnel Project. Let's welcome him and enjoy his remarks.
I am Masayoshi Kajikuri, chairman of the International Highway Foundation in Japan. Today, I am very honored to be able to introduce the history of the International Highway Project in Japan at this symposium sponsored by the Washington Times Foundation. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Dr. Yang for inviting me, Dr. Jenkins, and everyone involved in this symposium. As you all know, the Japan-Korea Tunnel concept as part of the International Highway was proposed by Dr. Sun Myung Moon in his keynote speech at the International Conference on the Unity of the Science held in Seoul, Korea on November 10, 1981. The International Highway Initiative connects the Eurasian continent with the superhighway, builds a major artery for people's exchanges and logistics, and shares, and expands science, technology, and economic prosperity in order to create a peaceful order and achieve lasting peace for humanity. Tokyo was positioned as the starting point for this peace project in his speech. After returning from this international conference, Japanese Unification Church key leaders held a board meeting on December 10th, established the International Highway Construction Committee chaired by Gentaro Kajikuri. In February 1982, in response to a request from the International Highway Construction Committee, the Japan-Korea Tunnel Research Project General Committee was organized within the World Peace Professor Academy, consisting mainly of university professors and other experts. Then the Unification Church established the International Highway Construction Corporation in order to develop sustainable projects as public works of the church at the board meeting. And offices were established in key locations such as Tokyo, Karatsu, and Tsushima as basis for activities. In May 1983, the Japan-Korea Tunnel Research Institute was established, led by President Yasuo Sasa. This is a conceptual image of the completed international highway. This is a conceptual image of the completed Japan-Korea undersea tunnel. I would like to introduce two people who played a major role in the early stages of promoting the International Highway Japan-Korea Tunnel Project in Japan. The first person is Dr. Eizaburo Nishibori. He attended the 10th ICAS held in Seoul, Korea in person, and as a person with a good understanding of the project and an advisor, he played a major role in promoting the project. The second person is Professor Yasuo Sasa, who served as the first chairman of the Japan-Korea Tunnel Research Institute. He played a very important role in geological surveys, route selection, and land acquisition to promote the Japan-Korea Tunnel project. This is a scene of Dr. Nishibori, Dr. Sasa, and Chairman Kajikuri and his wife spreading out maps and discussing the Japan-Korea undersea tunnel. Through a joint effort between the International Highway Construction Corporation and the Japan-Korea Tunnel Research Institute, we are conducting surface exploration, geological boring, and seabed exploration, as well as topographic surveys from the air by aircraft and research on route selection based on a huge amount of data. Based on the results of these studies, the base for excavating the survey diagonal shaft for the future construction of the main shaft was determined, and a groundbreaking ceremony was held in October 1986. Since then, excavation of the survey diagonal shaft has begun. The International Highway Research Institute was established in South Korea, led by Dr. Yoon Se-won, and project exchanges between Japan and South Korea were actively developed. Under these circumstances, the International Highway Construction Corporation visited China at the invitation of the Chinese government and had a meeting with Vice President Wang Chen to exchange opinions on the Asian Highway Initiative. Deng Xiaoping's government showed great interest in Dr. Moon's International Highway Initiative, and Vice President Wang Chen listened intently to Chairman Kajikuri's talk. On June 25, 2005, Dr. Moon announced the World Peace King Bridge and Tunnel project in the Bering Strait. In response to this proposal, the third phase of construction began at the inclined shaft site in Karatsu, and the excavation resumed. The survey tunnel is currently 540 meters long. The Japan-Korea tunnel concept has been frequently mentioned by the leaders of both Japan and South Korea, but the project did not become a national project. Meanwhile, in 2010, the Japanese and Korean governments proposed Japan-Korea New Era Joint Research Project. As 2010 marks the 100th anniversary of the annexation of Japan and Korea, a Japan-Korea New Era Research Project was developed by experts of both countries. And in October 2010, Japan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs published a project report as a result of this effort. The joint research covered a total of 21 agenda items, and the promotion of undersea tunnels was also on the agenda. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs report concluded that the Japan-Korea tunnel should be proceeded with due consideration to the national sentiments of both countries and with sufficient understanding and support from the people. In response to these views of the governments of both countries regarding the Japan-Korea undersea tunnel, the International Highway Foundation, along with volunteers, has organized prefectural councils to promote the Japan-Korea tunnel across the country. The Japan-Korea Tunnel Promotion Prefectural Councils in various parts of Japan were established in all prefectures over a period of about 8 years starting in 2010. Japan-Korea Tunnel Promotion Prefectural Councils in each region are hosting rallies to raise awareness. We have worked hard to expand the public understanding and support for promoting the Japan-Korea undersea tunnel, such as organizing a tour to visit the inclined shaft site in Karatsu. Then, in November 2017, representatives from all over the country gathered together to form the Japan-Korea Tunnel Promotion National Conference. Many experts, including diplomats from various countries and members of parliament, participated. In May 2018, the Japan-Korea Tunnel Research Report meeting was held at the National Diet Building. A total of 140 people participated, including 22 current members of the Diet. At this meeting, Professor Noda of Seinan University introduced his research report, Japan-Korea Tunnel, Contributing Peace and Prosperity. In March 2023, the International Highway Foundation completed the Japan-Korea Tunnel construction plan. The foundation's technical committee spent 10 years compiling geological survey results, route selection, construction method, budget, etc. We are confident that this will be extremely important and valuable research outcome when the Japan-Korea Tunnel project is developed as a national project in the future. The above is a brief introduction to the history of the International Highway Japan-Korea Tunnel Promotion Project. Thank you for listening until the end. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining our program today. Let's give all of you a round of applause for participating and learning about this really important and timely project. We hope that it was informative and look forward to future opportunities to work together. Enjoy the rest of your lunch and have a lovely day. Thank you.
For everyone, we will end the streaming now, the Zoom call. So thank you so much for joining us online. We'll see you again for our next webinars and conferences. Thank you.